Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It says 24th of February 2025. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, some big news over the weekend, and I wanted to start with the positive news for this episode because there is a bit of drama as well, as I'm sure you all know about the ByBit hack by now. But the positive news is that the SEC has withdrawn their lawsuit against Coinbase and OpenSea. As far as I know, those are the only two that have been withdrawn so far, but that obviously is sending a strong signal to everyone that those cases that were brought forward from the SEC towards these crypto companies in the US under the Democrats are going to be withdrawn. And I think, I've been talking about this for a little while on the refuel. I think I said back when this lawsuit first went ahead, this would take years to kind of fight out in the courts if it wasn't eventually dismissed, if powers changed, right? If the Republicans got in and got the presidency, well, that's exactly what happened. And now the SEC is headed up by a pro-crypto chairman. It is obviously way more pro-crypto overall. I think that they would have purged a lot of the anti-crypto people out of there. And that means that the case against Coinbase, which was baseless, honestly, the lawsuit against Coinbase from the SEC, as Brian Armstrong says here, the SEC was wrong on the law. This case has been just fully dismissed with prejudice as well, which I believe is legal speak for basically saying that the same case cannot be brought against Coinbase again, at least at the federal level, from my understanding. Someone who understands US law better than I do can comment on that and correct me if I'm wrong there. But this is a huge win for all of crypto, I think, not just from the regulatory side of things, but also from the side of basically US-based crypto businesses not having to fear the wrath of the SEC. I don't think they've had to fear it since Trump won. And since Gary Gensler was obviously removed, January 20th was his last day there, but it's only been a month since then, right? So if you really look at how fast it's already moved and how much of a 180 the SEC has done in regards to its approach to crypto, it really bodes well for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of people seem to miss this when looking at crypto. I know the markets are just like whatever right now. They're not great, obviously, depending on what assets you're in, especially if you're in like meme coins and you bought into the meme coin super cycle thesis. You're probably not doing too well, but obviously like the overall market is just not great, right? It's obviously got a lot of people feeling down about things, people kind of questioning, is this it? Are we in another bear market sort of thing? And you guys know my opinion on the market generally with regards to the cycles. I just think that the cycles are generally over as we know them. The 4-year cycle is over. And people can disagree with me, but I feel like the evidence keeps just piling up as time goes on there. But I think that's why people aren't realizing just how big of a news this is and aren't talking about this more. Because obviously when it was announced by Brian Armstrong here on Twitter, people were talking about it, but then like a day later, no one was really talking about it. No one's really talking about how this is positive for the whole ecosystem, how it's going to pay kind of dividends going forward, and how it means that US-based crypto companies especially don't have to worry as long as they're doing legit things. I think that there's this kind of, I guess, void right now where both the good kind of actors and the bad actors are just doing whatever. But I think, or at least doing, not whatever, but like the bad actors are doing bad things, the good actors are doing good things, and they're being treated, or at least seems to be being treated similarly by the regulators. But I think that's going to change going forward. I saw that the SEC wants to set up a crypto task force to go after the actual bad actors. So I'm hoping that actually something comes of that, because it's all well and good that the good actors aren't gone after by the SEC or aren't sued by the SEC for basically existing and being honest actors. But if the bad actors also aren't kind of prosecuted and aren't held liable for all the scamming that they do, then it's kind of just as bad, I think. So I'm glad that the SEC is looking at, setting up a crypto task force, making sure that they go after the actual scammers, the actual grifters, and not the legitimate companies in crypto, because there is just so many scams, guys. Like there's so many bad people in crypto. There's so many people taking advantage of others. There's just so much grifting going on. We need to put a stop to it, because I think that it actually is very long-term detrimental to the ecosystem. And we're seeing this play out with meme coins right now, but meme coins aren't the only thing. There's so much scamming going on everywhere that if it's just allowed to reign free, if it's really quote-unquote crime season, then that is extremely extractive, it's net negative, it's zero-sum, and it doesn't push the space forward at all. It actively hurts the space. So I hope that we see these scammers kind of brought to justice here. And I know that the whole kind of idea about blockchains is that they should be permissionless, but they are permissionless. That's why these scammers can do this. But the thing is that the scammers still exist in the real world. You still have to abide by the law of the land. You still can't just go around scamming everyone and defrauding everyone. The permissionless nature of these systems is not meant for that. It's meant for the fact that you should be able to transact and do financial applications and do really whatever you want in terms of like building whatever you want on chain, interacting with whatever you want, as long as you're not doing things that are considered scammy or doing things like fraud or grifting or whatever, as long as you're just doing things, to as like a positive to better yourself and to better those around you, then that is the whole kind of spirit of permissionlessness. At least that's my view on it there. But yeah, as I said, huge win here from Coinbase and OpenSea, of course, as well. Their lawsuit got withdrawn, which was great to see. I guess that's why they're comfortable doing a token now. They probably knew about this a little while ago, and they're like, okay, well, it's time to do our token because we can actually do it without facing the wrath of the SEC sort of thing. And I think with Coinbase's case being withdrawn as well here, I think the chances of Base having a token have gone up pretty dramatically as well. I think that, I've been saying this for a while, that Base would eventually have a token. I still think they are going to have a token. I think the chances just went up. Before I said it was like a 50-50, I think. Now I think it's like a 75% chance that they have a token. Not sure when, maybe this year, maybe next year. Don't know on timing. It's always a bit funny to think about timing of things because it's always either later than you think or earlier than you think. I remember when I thought that the Optimism would be the last L2 to actually do a token, and they ended up being the first one to do a token. So yeah, it's kind of hard to I guess gauge these things and see what happens when. But I do think that Base is eventually going to have a token, especially now that there's a much friendlier SEC where they're not going to get sued for just doing a token, basically. If they're doing it to defraud people and scam people, sure, go after them. But if they're doing it as part of their decentralization of the Base network, wanting to get the community involved, that sort of honest building should not be prosecuted. It should be actively encouraged, and it should be helped along as much as possible as well, especially for these US-based companies, since the US government should have a huge vested interest in making sure that US-based companies do well, if not the best, in each of their fields here. But you can go give Brian Armstrong's tweet about this a read. It is a bit long, but it gives more context about all of this. I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I think the biggest piece of news over the weekend, besides the Coinbase thing, was the ByBit hack. Now, for those of you who don't know what this was about, $1.5 billion worth of ETH was stolen from ByBit, which is a centralized exchange. It was not a bug in the Ethereum protocol or an Ethereum smart contract that allowed this ETH to be stolen. It was basically a very sophisticated attack that was conducted by North Korea, by the Lazarus Group in North Korea. And essentially what they did is they got malware onto the devices of the signers of the multisig of the addresses that ByBit uses. They were able to get the signers to sign something that moved the funds off of ByBit out of the ByBit cold wallet addresses into the hot wallet addresses and then onto the attacker's address there. So this, I believe, is the largest centralized exchange hack in history from what I know. And I'm talking hack, not like collapse. Obviously, FTX is the largest collapse, but this is the largest hack. And it happened not from an exploit or anything. It happened from, as I said, a very sophisticated kind of attack from a nation-state group. North Korea is obviously very known for doing this. They don't answer to anyone because who's going to prosecute them, right? They're already sanctioned to hell and they're already the enemy of every other nation out there. So basically, they don't care about doing the most illegal things. And that's what they do to do this, right? There's no recourse here for them in terms of what, I mean, they've already got all these sanctions on them. What are you going to do? Sanction them again? You can't, right? So they know that they're basically, I wouldn't say untouchable is the right word, but they know that there's no repercussions to this. So they're just going to keep doing it. And they got away with a lot, guys. And of course, there was a lot of concern trolling as well over the weekend especially from Bitcoin maximalists, but also from a lot of Solana people too, which was very disappointing to see, but not unexpected, that Ethereum should roll back the chain in order to return the stolen ETH to ByBit. Now, this is not possible for like so many different reasons, and Tim Biker actually shared a really great tweet going through why this isn't actually possible, why this doesn't make sense, whether it's a rollback or something called an irregular state transition or a regular state change. It's just unworkable in today's environment. TLDR is because that you can't just do I guess like surgical recovery of the funds, even as part of an irregular state transition, because everything's so intertwined now. And Tim gives a lot of examples in his tweet here, so go read that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But it's so intertwined that it doesn't even work. So we're not even talking about the fact that like if there is appetite to do it or not, which there isn't. There is zero appetite for this. Anyone pushing the narrative that Ethereum was even considering rolling back the chain to save these funds was just setting a false narrative here. There was no consideration from anyone in the Ethereum community, no Ethereum leaders, no one. I saw this from no one except Bitcoin maximalists and Solana people. You know, Raj, one of Solana's founders, actually said this as well, tweeted this out. That was ridiculous. I was like, dude, like, come on. You know, this is just, this is really stupid, honestly, especially coming from someone who people give legitimacy to. It's not just some random Bitcoin maxi or some random person on Twitter. It's the founder of one of the founders of Solana. That was really, really disappointing to see. But as I said, not surprised there. But yeah, as I said, like, it's not workable to do this here. And I think that when you look at what happened in the past with the DAO, like, everyone always references the DAO. It's like, oh, the DAO, we did it, the DAO, we did a rollback. It's like, no, we didn't do a rollback. The chain was not rolled back during the DAO. What happened with the DAO, and why it was a relatively unique situation as well, is that, one, it happened way earlier on in Ethereum's life. There was no DeFi, there was no intermingling. Ethereum was tiny in 2016, right? So it was much easier to do back then. It was also a much larger percentage of the supply, of the total supply of ETH. I believe the percentage that was stolen from ByBit was like 0.5% or something. I think the DAO was like 15-20%. So it was a way bigger percentage of the supply back then. And as I said, the ecosystem was smaller, and it wasn't a rollback. It was an irregular state transition. What this means is that the network, I guess like the core devs, were able to surgically give the ETH back, or at least take the ETH away from the attacker and give it back to its rightful owners, especially because the ETH was also frozen for a month. So the attacker got the ETH, transferred it into this other address, but they weren't going to be able to access it for a month. So essentially, they gave the core developers time to do this. So this isn't the case with the ByBit hack, because the funds were immediately available. They could be bridged everywhere. They could be put into different DeFi protocols, so on and so forth, right? So that wouldn't work here, even in a regular state transition. A rollback 100% wouldn't work. Ethereum is completely different to Bitcoin in that sense as well, because Bitcoin's actually had a rollback in the past too. Very early on in its life in 2010, it had a bug in the client software. A lot of people don't know about this, but this is a well-known bug where a lot of Bitcoin was minted, but then the chain was rolled back in order to fix this bug back really early on, as I said, in 2010. Now, if you wanted to do a rollback on Ethereum today, it's just not possible. Like, it just doesn't work, because what a rollback is and why it's different to an irregular state transition is that you can imagine that if you wanted to essentially, maybe I'm thinking of an analogy on the spot here, but let's just say that you have a city. There's 100 buildings in the city, and one of those buildings randomly blows up, and you're like, okay, shit, we want to reverse that. Like, that's really bad. People died. Like, we want to reverse that. So let's say you had the magical ability to reverse time for just that one building. So you reverse time, building's no longer blown up, and you fix what was going to blow it up, and away you go. The 100 buildings are back, right? It's all well and good. But if you were to do a chain rollback, it's very different, because let's just say that building blew up and then like a week goes past and you're like, okay, well, we've got the fix in, we want to fix that building, but we have to basically rewind time for a week. Everything, like not just for the building, but for the whole city. All 100 buildings in the city, everything that happened in the city, everything that happened within that city, contacting other cities, and within like people going in and out of that city and so on and so forth, that would all have to be undone. Like a week's worth would have to be undone. As I've said plenty of times, completely unworkable, doesn't work in reality, doesn't work logically. It's just not something that is ever on the table with these sorts of things, especially for something like Ethereum, which is an expressive blockchain here. So that's the technical reasons why it's not possible. The social reasons is that, like, there's not ever going to be a bailout or a rollback or a regular state transition for something like this. The only time that it would possibly ever be entertained would be if there was a critical bug at the protocol level. Let's say, for example, there was a bug that allowed infinite minting of ETH. That would obviously get fixed, right? And no one would be against that getting fixed because it's a protocol bug. It's not like we're bailing out some person for doing for getting hacked or for accidentally sending their ETH to the wrong address, so on and so forth, right? We are basically fixing the chain at a protocol level exploit. But let's say that it happens at the contract level, because the protocol level stuff is pretty obvious that we're going to fix that. But let's just say on the contract level, well, it depends, right? People were saying, well, what if the wrapped ETH contract was drained? It's like, well, it actually can't be, because there's no admin functions on it. So it's actually impossible. It's not me just saying it's impossible because there's no bugs in it. It doesn't matter if there is. There's no bug that could do that. From my understanding of the wrapped ETH contract, there are no admin functions functions. There's no way that that could actually happen in that contract. But you could just say, well, okay, what if there was a contract that held 20-30% of all ETH, and that was hacked, and then North Korea or whoever it is stole that ETH? Would we roll back or do an irregular state transition for that? Probably much more likely than the ByBit scenario, for example. But as I said, it is just so hard to do. It doesn't make sense to do it, and it affects so many different parties. It would be catastrophic. Let's just put it that way. That's another reason why we don't want to have too much ETH in single contracts, especially staking contracts and restaking contracts, right? Because there's probably not going to be a bailout because it doesn't actually work. The bailout or the fixing of the hack or the reversing of the hack would actually maybe do more damage than the hack would do. And that's saying something, considering that if it's like a 20% of all ETH supply being drained or something like that. But even in that scenario, it'd be very hard to even offload 20% of all ETH, even for North Korea. They're going to have a hard time offloading what they stole. They're eventually probably going to do it because they've got different connections in different places. But yeah, it's just like a whole different ball game there. So that's the technical side and the social side of things. As I said, there was never any entertainment of doing a rollback or fork. That was concern trolling at the kind of like social sphere from Bitcoin maximalists, from Solana people. Now, Ansgar had a really great tweet thread about this, because I think the social side is very important here, where he said, make no mistake, what we are seeing is a coordinated attack trying to undermine Ethereum's credible neutrality. Mind you, not in reality, but in perception. Those with high context know how silly this is, but low context observers get the impression a rollback was on the cards. Coinbase reported on this because Arthur Hayes put out a tweet that basically said, oh, Ethereum should roll back. So Coinbase reported on it saying that Arthur Hayes called for it. And it's like, so? Arthur Hayes is no one in Ethereum. He's the founder of BitMEX. He's a trader. He's a VC now. He's got a fund. He's basically no one in Ethereum, and also like anyone could call for this. It's not like he said that and the core devs and the Ethereum community were like, yeah, wow, we should do a rollback. No one said that, right? So CoinDesk did that, and then Raj, as I said, one of the Solana founders, tweeted out, rollback Ethereum. There's precedent for this. What a ridiculous tweet, right? Absolutely just gross. Honestly, I replied to him saying that he should delete his account because I was just honestly very upset. Like, I can handle this from like the Bitcoin maximalists, from random people on Twitter, because most people think that they're a joke already. Like, no one's really taking them seriously except their own little clique, right? And their own little cult there. But Raj and Anatoly and like the Solana people, they're still taken seriously by a lot of this ecosystem. I don't think they should be, because they just gaslight and lie all the time. Honestly, the gloves are off at this point. I don't care if people are going to say that I'm just coping over Solana. I'm not. I'm calling out the people here, not because they're involved in Solana. I'm calling them out for what they are and how they act. They act terribly. Like, they just gaslight, they lie, they say shit like this. Really just annoying, right? It just really stokes the fires of misinformation and confusion here. But Ansgar continued his tweet thread basically with the same theme here. And then I quote tweeted him and saying, it's not a conspiracy to say that Ethereum is under constant attack from pretty much every corner of crypto. And that's because this is where the incentives lead. Bitcoiners don't want Ethereum on the same pedestal as Bitcoin. That's why they fighted the ETH ETF so hard. That's why they always try to discredit Ethereum. No matter what happens there, right? And they definitely don't want to see ETH being a competitor, money or store of value to BTC, and other layer ones want to beat Ethereum at its own game, and all of their supporters are very incentivized to always compare their favorite L1 to the biggest fish, especially in terms of valuations. This all results in an enormous amount of lies, misinformation, gaslighting, and FUD that honest people have to work overtime to address and correct. I've been doing this since at least 2018, guys, addressing and correcting all of this FUD. It is absolutely exhausting, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that unfortunately the bullshit travels way faster and way further than the truth does. I don't know why this is the case. I'm sure there's been studies done on this. I'm sure there is a scientific term for this, but it's true. It's true in crypto. It's true outside of crypto. For some reason, most people believe the bullshit like just at face value. I don't understand why. I can understand it for maybe people who didn't grow up with technology, or older folks who just basically believe everything they read on the internet. But for people who grew up with it, for people who know that there's a lot of misinformation and lies on the internet, for them to just believe everything they read is ridiculous to me. It feels like there almost needs to be, starting from the earliest days that a child goes to school, a kind of like mantra taught to them, basically saying that you shouldn't trust everything that you read on the internet. You shouldn't trust most of what you read on the internet. Sort of like we tell our, tell kids about stranger danger, or to walk both, to look both ways before that you cross the street. It's almost like we have to start very young and just drill that into people from when they're very young, that they shouldn't trust what they read on the internet. 99% of it is bullshit, because it's just so bad at this point, guys. Like, as I said, as someone on the front lines here, someone who is exposed to this every day, it's very bad. And as you guys know, I've been trying to fight this for a long time. I'm someone who tries to stick to the truth, but unfortunately the crap spreads way faster than the truth does. But hey, I'm going to keep fighting for the truth there. But you can go give Ansgar's tweet thread a read and Tim Byko's tweet a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. Alright, so Fabda here put together an Ethereum Foundation appreciation post, which I thought was really great, because I've been arguing in the Daily Gwei Discord channel that the Ethereum Foundation has done a lot of really great stuff over the last few months, and they don't get credit for this. And I think partly because they suck at marketing themselves, but also because everyone's blaming the EF for the ETH price action, which I think is off the mark as well. But I just wanted to kind of go through each of these points on this list here, and see how they're actually addressing problems, because it's all well and good for like the EF or whoever to do things, but like just doing things is different to doing things that are actually required, impactful, necessary. And I think pretty much everything on this list is necessary and very impactful. So the first thing is that they launched the Open Intents framework to tackle chain fragmentation with 30 plus ecosystem collaborators. I talked about this on the other day on the Refuel. This is spearheaded by the EF here. They're tackling the real issue of chain fragmentation, the real issue of interoperability between the different L2s. So that's a huge thing there. They put 50,000 ETH into DeFi, which is huge, because it basically, as I explained the other day, signals to the ecosystem that the EF trusts their treasury in DeFi. They want to be using it. They want to be part of the chain. They want to be using the chain, obviously, that they're building here, and being more public about it. They published a transparency report on the EF treasury. That was really great to see. Didn't get nearly enough attention as all the FUD around that did, but they published that. I haven't seen a full transparency report from many foundations in crypto. I don't even know of any others that have done that. Just the Ethereum Foundation so far. Vitalik published a blog post highlighting the short-term L1 scaling needs. Obviously, we want to scale the L1 up more than we did with the gas limit increase. They announced significant leadership changes at the Ethereum Foundation. Not the changes that some people wanted, with like Danny Ryan as head of the EF, but they announced a bunch of people going into new leadership roles, and I believe there's more changes still coming. We did the 36 million gas limit increase, which was advocated for people as part of the EF. We've got a hard fork date for Pectra. Testnet's forking actually in like less than 12 hours from when I'm recording this, and then so on and so forth. I mean, you can read the rest here. There's so many on this list. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. I just realized I'm already at 22 minutes, so maybe I shouldn't go through all of them here. But yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to the EF there. They've done a lot of phenomenal work over just the last few months, and I'm sure they're going to keep doing this into the years from here. Alright, so we have a new website where you can monitor an Ethereum slot. So as you guys know, in the Ethereum chain, or I guess like the way the Ethereum blockchain works, is that every 12 seconds there is a slot that's made up of, I guess like three core components: a block, the attestations, and the aggregation of the attestation signatures here. And then a slot is published on the network, and then we move on to the next slot. Now, this tool comes from the ETH Panda Ops team at the Ethereum Foundation. It is using the data that's collected by that sidecar software that I talked about the other day. So essentially, it doesn't cover the whole network. It only covers what the data that's being fed to them by people running this software on their own machines that they're running validators on. So that's why some people commented and said, "Oh, it doesn't look like there's that many validators." You can see on the map here that the spread here. It's like, yes, because it covers a very small percentage of the total validator set, the total node operator set. So don't look at this and think that it's exhaustive. It definitely isn't, but it is still a very cool tool. It's a very cool new dashboard to monitor the Ethereum network here. And I actually got an old tablet that I don't use anymore, loaded this up on it, and put it in the case of my Solo staking machine. So now I have this permanently up there as a display with my Solo staking machine there. Just a nice little dashboard to have there. So I was excited to do this here. But I think this is great. This is something that is going to inform a lot of research and development on Ethereum as well, the data that's being fed into this. because it essentially gives us data around timing of things and latency and how quickly or not quickly the network is building blocks, aggregating attestation, so on and so forth. And we're going to be able to compare the data pre and post Pectra too, because as you guys know, in Pectra, we have the max EB EIP coming, which allows us to greatly reduce the number of validators on the network while still keeping the same amount of security, because it's just the validators, not the node operators. So essentially, the node operators and the ETH at stake is going to stay the same, but we're going to consolidate this down. So if you're running 10 validators today with 320 ETH total, 32 ETH per validator, after max EB goes live, you'll be able to run all 320 ETH on just one validator, and you'll still provide the same amount of security to the network, but the network now has 90% less validators on it. Your validator reduction is 90% less, so the network now has 9 less validators on it, which, I mean, helps in a very small way, but if enough people do it, it helps in a really big way and allows us to keep scaling up the network and allows us to scale things like the gas limit and adding more blobs here. So if you want to check this out, you can check the dashboard out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Nixo has started publishing a all-core dev roundup for each month now. So this is the Feb 2025 roundup. You can read this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But essentially, if you don't want to keep up with the all-core devs call every week and you just want to keep up to date every month instead, this is something for you. And it's basically just a summary of what was discussed in the all-core devs calls over the last month. And it's quite short, which is nice, very easily digestible. It's got a lot of links here that you can click through, and if you want to go and read more about it, you can. But I just wanted to shout this out because I know that a lot of people find it hard to keep up with core dev related things, especially in today's day and age where things are moving faster and faster. So huge kudos to Nixo for putting this together, and I can't wait to read March's update here. All right, so I spoke before about that open intents framework that I covered on last week's Refuel, about how a lot of ecosystem partners are trying to make it so that you can have just seamless interoperability between different L2s and seamless bridging between different L2s. And Evgeny here, who is the co-founder of Zerion, tweeted out saying that he had a chance to test the open intents framework from the Ethereum Foundation. It took less than 5 seconds to bridge 10 USDC from Base to Arbitrum. It's a huge step towards a multi-chain future. So you can already see that this is in action here across 2 different L2s and 2 different L2s as part of different ecosystems too, because it's not just Base and OP mainnet, it's Base and Arbitrum, 2 completely different L2 ecosystems. Now, speaking of the open intents framework, Stacy here put together a really great tweet thread explaining exactly what this is, like your 5 and then 25. So I explained a bit about this last week, about what an intent is, how it works in the background, but Stacey did an even deeper dive here that you should go check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below because it's a really great thread and it's not very long. It's like 5 or 6 tweets long, and you can learn more about intents here. So I'll link that for you to go check out. All right, last up here, Farcaster now has a wallet. So Dan Romero here, the founder of Farcaster, put out a tweet saying that there is no complicated setup with this wallet, 100% reliable mobile transactions, and no app switching required. So essentially, this wallet is built right into the Warpcast app. It's ready to go as soon as you are, and it has a very familiar and simple interface in order to do things like sending assets across different to different people across chains, and also swapping assets on here as well. So swapping USDC for ETH and other tokens there. Now this is, I think, very welcome because of the fact that Warpcast and Farcaster generally has a lot of tokens on it, especially things like they do NFTs, and they do like meme coins, they do tipping, stuff like that. So it's great that there's a wallet there that's ready for people to just get up and running with, because you can imagine there's people that sign up to Farcaster without being exposed to crypto at all. You know, if Farcaster wants to go beyond crypto people and wants to basically become a real Twitter alternative, then they have to go outside of the crypto bubble and to regular everyday non-crypto people. But at the same time, you want to bring those people into crypto as well. So what better way to do that than to get them signed up and then have a wallet for them, waiting for them directly in app, and no need to switch to another app, and they can just get started with crypto straight away. So a really great thing here from Farcaster, from Warpcast. You can go check that out for yourself. If you have the Warpcast app, it should already be there for you there. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today's episode. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Wednesday. Thanks everyone.